Yesterday, the House Oversight Committee held a closed-door interview with Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer. Archer testified Hunter would put his father on the phone in front of business associates, but they, quote, never once spoke about any business dealings. Now, Republicans are using this to say Joe Biden was the, quote, brand his son was selling around the world. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman of New York. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and was a part of yesterday's closed-door meeting. Congressman, it's great to have you here. So,
good to be here.
Help us understand who Devon Archer is and what he did and did not say yesterday in that meeting.
Devon Archer was Hunter Biden's business partner from 2013 to 2016, and he was most notably on the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden. And what he testified to yesterday completely absolves Joe Biden of any involvement in Hunter Biden's business world. And notwithstanding whatever alleged smoke Chairman Comer says there is, the witness testimony was very clear that Joe Biden was not involved in any of their business dealings. Joe Biden got no benefit. Joe Biden did not change any of his actions for the benefit of his son in any way, shape, or form. That Hunter may have, quote, promoted the illusion of influence on his father, but the witness was very clear that it was an illusion. There was no actual influence, and what the evidence has shown in this entire investigation, and we keep getting witness after witness who's supposed to be their star witness showing Joe Biden's connection, is the only evidence is that that Joe Biden's official actions ran counter to Hunter Biden's interests, because this witness said that Burisma believed they had the corrupt prosecutor general, and I quote what the witness said, under control, and they did not want him to be fired because that might mean that Burisma and their president would get investigated, and yet that's exactly what Joe Biden advocated. That's the only evidence at all of Joe Biden's connection in any way, shape, or form to Hunter Biden's business interest. And it begs the question, Hunter Biden has been investigated by the Department of Justice by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney for 5 years, including all of the foreign business accounts, foreign bank records, FARA violations, all that stuff. That's the Department of Justice's job. Congress's job is not to investigate a private citizen. Congress's job is oversight, and there must be some legislative purpose, and that has to connect to Joe Biden, and there is simply no connection.
So, as you say, and we've said many times on this show, there's just been no evidence. They've been given a ton of opportunities. James Comer last night on Hannity, what's the evidence? Hannity pleading with him, show us something. Well, all we have is smoke. We don't have any fire. And you would think, as you say, over many years, they would have found it by now. Do you concede at least, though, that it was unseemly for Hunter Biden, that it appears at least 20 times there was a business deal, to just so happen to call up the Vice President of the United States and to suggest, look, I'm connected to people in high places. You want me on this deal?
Well, I think Hunter Biden has been open about that himself, that he certainly used his last name to benefit his own business interests. The question, though, is not whether Hunter Biden did anything. The question is whether he did have any influence or did have any access, and whether the president did anything to benefit Hunter. And what was clear in the testimony yesterday is that there were many instances where Hunter Biden tried to get, quote, credit for something that his father did completely independent. And the key here is that they never discussed business. They said hello. It was, you know, greetings, niceties, salutations, small talk. It was never involved with business. And even Devon Archer said that Joe Biden has no business experience, wouldn't have known what Hunter was doing, and was not interested nor ever discussed it. And so not only was there no evidence connecting Joe Biden, but the allegations that Joe Biden lied are wrong as well. He didn't discuss Hunter's business dealings.
So, Congressman, just because it is the source of so much smoke, could you just, with specifics, tell us these phone calls that were a matter of such discussion yesterday, like what were they about? What would then Vice President Biden say in these conversations? You know, walk us through what happened.
Right. So let's put this in context. Beau Biden got very sick in early 2015. He died in the spring of 2015, which was right in the middle when Devon Archer had his business dealings with Hunter Biden. At that point, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden began to speak every day because they were both devastated by Beau's death. They spoke every day. The witness testified that over his 10-year relationship with Hunter Biden, there may be approximately 20 times when in one of those conversations, Hunter Biden would put his father at a dinner, not at a business meeting, at a dinner that he was having if he happened to get a hold of his father, and would ask his father to say hello to whoever was at the table. And that was essentially the extent of it. It was unclear, and the witness testified, this is not me saying that, the witness testified that a lot of times, most of the time, Joe didn't even know who the people were at the dinner table. So this was just simply, this may have been Hunter's effort to say, hey, this is, the vice president, this is my dad. But the critical part here for Congress, and that's what we have to make sure we understand, is that Joe Biden was doing nothing to benefit his son.
So, Congressman, you used the word illusion a couple of minutes ago, and Congressman Comer, your chairman, appears to be trying to sell the illusion of deep criminality that Hunter Biden participated in. You also framed up the time period of 2013 through 2016, 2017, at which point Hunter Biden is alleged to have taken money from Ukraine and other countries where he was trying to do business with, and that's the source of some charges that he failed to register with the State Department or whoever you register.
No, the charges are not that he has not been charged with that.
I know, but if he were to be charged by this committee or the Justice Department, isn't the statute of limitations on all of those things, isn't it 5 years? Wouldn't it be over with? They couldn't do anything?
It's possible, but this was a 5-year investigation. I'm sure at some point they would have been able to charge him if that were the case. We saw an email yesterday that was from the hard drive, so the witness was unable to authenticate it. But in the email, Hunter Biden made it very clear that in his role with Burisma, that he was on the board, that he could not violate FARA, and he hired attorneys, he hired a lobbying firm. His role was the corporate governance and the lobbying strategy, but he was very clear that he did not. Now, the Department of Justice investigated that. I don't know what they found. They didn't charge him, but that's just not Congress's role. Congress's role is not to investigate a private citizen for a FARA violation. Congress's role is oversight over the president and over the executive branch. And they have demonstrated no connection to the president. So this investigation is now very clearly a complete fishing expedition that has no basis in fact to continue with it. And every witness that they bring in continues to confirm that Joe Biden had nothing to do with it. So then begs the question, why are we still doing this? Why are we wasting taxpayer money on this fishing expedition where there's no basis for Congress to be involved? The Department of Justice can do what it wants, but that's not Congress's role.
Quickly, Congressman, have they tracked down the fugitive star witness who was also a double agent for China and an arms dealer?
Surprisingly, Willie, we have not heard very much about him since it became clear that he was indicted for making false statements, arms trafficking, being an agent of China, and on the lam.
He's on the lam. And what about the Biden bribery tapes we've heard about?
Right. So the one critical part yesterday is that the witness completely debunked those allegations. He was on the board of Burisma. All of the money that Hunter Biden got from Burisma as being a member of the board went through their joint company, and he said there was no bribe of either Hunter or Joe.
Democratic member of the House Oversight Committee who was in the room yesterday for that interview, Congressman Dan Goldman of New York. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.